the last reflections of Stephen Hawking, what they were and why that saddened you. Would you share that if you don't mind?
Well, I mean, I only had one encounter with Hawking personally. It was extremely impersonal, actually. I
Hmm.
attended a lecture series that he gave second or third year of grad school. It was right about the time that he brought out the little book, A Brief History of Time, and the lecture series. The book was based, I'm sure, in part on the lecture series, or the lecture series was a popularization of the book,
Okay.
and uh, so he was. I walked out of class and nodded to him, touched his wheelchair. I think so I didn't know him at all, but I found him an absolutely fascinating figure
Hmm.
because it was clear he was a kind of God-obsessed atheist. He was really
Huh.
interested in the deep questions. And in the 1960s, when he was a PhD student, was first diagnosed with ALS, uh, he nearly dropped out of his PhD and then decided to press forward. And the PhD thesis, which I have, chapter 3, he develops this first mathematical proof of a cosmological singularity. And he was thinking about black hole physics. So if the universe is expanding outward in the forward direction of time, which by the 1960s he and other physicists knew, then in the reverse direction of time, according to Einstein's theory of general relativity, since massive bodies curve space, the curvature of space would have been tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter as you went back in time till finally you'd reach a limiting case where you couldn't go back any further because the curvature of space had reached an infinite, a limiting case. That was the cosmological singularity. It marked the beginning of the universe. No later work he did with George Ellis, he said this marks essentially the creation of the universe. From that point in the mid 60s, he published some technical papers with Roger Penrose establishing the singularity using even more rigorous mathematics than he'd used in his PhD, and then with Ellis in 72. And there was an obvious theological implication to this, or theistic implication, because if the physical universe of matter, space, time, and energy, if even space and time have a beginning,
Hmm.
then prior to that, if you're going to explain the origin of the universe, uh, you need something external to that whole system. You need something that does not reside solely in time and space. It has the power to initiate a great change of state from nothing physical to everything physical. You're looking at the need for an external creator. And people have seen the little film, The Theory of Everything,
Yeah.
um, which was, I think, based on a book that his ex-wife Jane wrote. Um, he was well aware of these theological implications, and he was looking for an alternative. And so in the mid 80s, he wrote a piece. He wrote a technical article on something called quantum cosmology, which was an attempt to explain the origin of the universe as a consequence of underlying physical laws that existed in some way independently of matter,
Okay.
space, time, and energy.
Okay.
And and then he wrote a little book on this, Brief History of Time, in 1988, which is a monster bestseller.
Hmm.
And so he attempted, in a sense, to solve the problem of the origin of the universe without invoking God. I mean, he was very explicit about this in his popular versions of the work, and kind of doubled down on that and some things he wrote just before he died, where he was I
Hmm.
forget the exact title, what was about the big questions. And I found Hawking to be a kind of, I mean, he was a brilliant scientist, a brilliant physicist, uh, and I found his kind of the metaphysical tension inside him to be fascinating because
Hmm.
it was something I could definitely relate to, and yet it saddened me because I think he came to the wrong answer.
Hmm.
I think he was a brilliant physicist, but his philosophy of science was a little off. He said, because there is a law such as gravity, therefore we don't need to invoke God to explain the origin of the universe. Because there's a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself. But another advocate of quantum cosmology named Alexander Velinsky, who had the same idea, a similar idea, which was that there are pre-existing laws, basically the physics of quantum, the physics of the quantum world, in some way pre-exists a material realm of matter, space, time, and energy, because there is such a these physical laws pre-exist the origin of the universe and somehow cause it to come into existence. Therefore, we can explain the universe from nothing. That was the idea that Lawrence Krauss popularized. But Velinsky, whose work Krauss popularized, said, well, wait a minute. If these physical laws exist prior to there being matter, space, time, and energy, what tablet could they be written on? The laws of physics describe the interaction of matter and energy.
Right.
They don't tell us where matter and energy came from in the first place. If they exist independent of matter and energy existing, if they exist before matter and energy exists, that's really weird, because then all you have is math. That's all the physical laws are, mathematical expressions. But math is a concept. It exists in a mind. So Velinsky says, are we therefore, in positing these pre-existing purely mathematical laws, implying that there was a mind that predated the universe? And Hawking himself tumbled to something like that when he said, what puts fire in the equations that gives them a universe to describe? And so in a way, I argued in the new book that the quantum cosmological model implies a prior mental realm. It implies a prior transcendent mind. And there's some other reasons for that, more than the ones I've indicated here.
Sure.
But and I also thought I thought that even that Hawking, Velinsky, if these guys are right, then even if they're right, or concede for the premise that they're right, you still have a theistic implication.
Wow.
And I thought Hawking missed that. And I also thought that when he said that the laws of physics, because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. No need to invoke God to light the blue touch paper that gets. And I thought, no, that's a misunderstanding of what the laws of nature do and what they are. This is a philosophical misconception on his part. The laws of nature describe how matter and energy interact with each other once they already exist.
Right.
They do not cause anything. They're descriptive, and they certainly don't cause the origin of matter, space, time, and energy. That's a category error. And so Hawking placed rested his skepticism in the existence of God, I think, on a philosophical misconception of the nature of natural laws.